The degree apprenticeship application process explained. In this video, I'm going to go through and explain the degree apprenticeship application process, exactly what it says on the tin. Just before we do that, let me introduce myself. My name's Owen. I'm a degree apprentice and I help people get degree apprenticeships in the engineering, technology and finance industries. Last year, I helped a whole bunch of people get offers from companies like JLR, HSBC, Amazon, Rolls-Royce, KPMG, just to name a few. Without any further ado, let's get into the video about the degree apprenticeship application process explained. So first of all, let me talk about the university application process. So you're probably all familiar with the university application process. This is where you apply centrally through UCAS, and you have to write that 4,000 character personal statement to apply to a maximum of 5 universities. Okay, that's what it is for university. It is completely different for degree apprenticeships. Okay, so forget all about this university application process. It's different for degree apprenticeships. This is what it is for degree apprenticeships instead. For degree apprenticeships, you have to apply individually to each company via their website. Then each company is going to have their own application process, which is going to be different for each company. Okay, so it's not just one sort of centralized, submit your personal statement, 5 universities at once. For degree apprenticeships, it is different and separate for each company, which means you can actually apply to as many companies as you want. I ended up applying to 13. I always recommend that people apply to 10 plus degree apprenticeships just because they're so competitive, and it means you don't miss out on a degree apprenticeship. But what it means is you can apply to as many as you want because they're all different application processes. So as I said, each company has a different way of doing it, but it generally works out into these 3 stages. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk through every single stage that a company might do. Okay, so for certain companies, it's going to differ. They might do some of this one, some of this one. They might do it in a different order. But in general, most degree apprenticeship application processes follow this broad structure. Okay, so just want to put this out as a disclaimer. Not every single company is going to do every single one of these stages, but most companies will basically sort of resemble what I've done here. Okay, so it usually is starting with an initial application. Then if you're successful there, you can get moved on to sort of some intermediate stages where they start of take a few more people out of the process. And then once you're left in there, it's usually an assessment centre, which is the last thing they do during a degree apprenticeship application process. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's start with the initial application. So with degree apprenticeships, most applications open anywhere from November to March. So as I said, completely different application process for each company. So it all depends on when each company wants to do their vacancies. Some open them as early as November. Some open them even as late as March and April. Okay, so it's about checking with the companies that you want to apply to, make sure you're on the right timeline so that you know when to apply. And just a note here, finance ones usually start earlier from September, so I know finance is a very popular degree apprenticeship. Those ones start their applications in September and October, and sometimes if you wait until November, they're already closed. So that's just one to prime you for. If you're interested in finance, you need to make sure you're on the ball with that one because they start earlier. These initial applications are going to have deadlines. So say it opens on the 1st of November, it might have an application deadline of apply by the 30th of December, right? Maybe it's like a 1 month or 2 month window they leave open. The thing is, many of these actually close early because degree apprenticeships are so popular. So what this means is don't wait until the last day to submit your application. Oh, if the deadline is 20th of January, don't wait to do it on the 20th of January, 19th of January. You want to be doing it as soon as possible because they can close early. For example, JLR, they had some roles closing in the middle of February, and actually those roles were supposed to stay open until end of March, start of April. So they closed almost 1.5, 2 months early effectively because that's how popular they are. So you want to be literally applying as soon as possible after some of these applications go live. So it's definitely something to keep track of, when the companies you're interested in, when their applications go live, so you can apply as soon as possible. You can use the websites Rate My Apprenticeship and also the government's Find an Apprenticeship service to track which vacancies are live, and you can find high paying degree apprenticeships there because you can filter for degree level, filter for salary, all this sort of thing. So those are some good websites to find lots of different companies. So just an example then, just to put this into perspective. So for September 2025 starters this year, applications are going to open from November 2024. So if you're applying in year 13, that'll be November of your year 13. And then, as I said, if it's finance, then you just need to make sure you're ready a couple of months early because those applications usually open in September. So what does your initial application actually involve? Well, it can include any of these sort of 5 steps. So as I said at the start, it's going to vary between companies. Some companies ask for a CV, some companies don't. Some companies ask for a cover letter, some don't. Some have application questions, some don't, etc., etc. But in your initial application, it's going to be some variation of what's on the screen now. Okay, so let me go into more detail. So the first one is details, and this is almost every single application they're going to ask for this. This is where they just need things like your name, address, date of birth, passport number, national insurance number, etc., etc. Just details they can put in their system for your application. And then the key one here is they're also going to need your grades, both the ones you've achieved for potentially GCSE, and then the ones you're predicted for A-levels. And just a note here with degree apprenticeships, the grade requirements are actually lower than university. So for certain courses at university, you might need an A star and 2 A's or 3 A's, something like that. Usually the degree apprenticeship equivalent, you only need a B and a C or BBC or something like that. It, of course, varies between different companies, different courses, all this sort of thing. But in general, if you look at the university grade requirements and the degree apprenticeship grade requirements, the degree apprenticeship ones are lower. So that's just helpful there on the grade things. You don't have to get as high grades. There's a bit less pressure there in your exams and that sort of thing. Okay. So a lot of companies ask for a CV. You might have heard of CV before if you've had to apply for a job before, or you might have never done a CV before. A CV is basically a summary of yourself. It's a collection of all your experience, your achievements, your education. It's basically a document which you can present to an employer saying, this is why you should give me a job because I've done this, 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 and this. This is why I'd be a good fit for the job. Okay, so this is actually one of the real CVs I actually submitted to one of my degree apprenticeships. I've just like blanked out all the private information, like my address and all that sort of thing. But this is one of the real ones I actually submitted that helped me get my 8 degree apprenticeship offers. So you can see here, key things I've put in here is like a personal statement, which is 3 or 4 sentences which explain you as a person, explains your skills, all that sort of thing. Your education, of course, you have the grades on there, and then you've got a nice little work experience section. That's good to have because work experience is super important. I think work experience was the #1 reason why I managed to get my 8 degree apprenticeship offers, just because it made me look so good as a candidate. And then also I'd put things like key achievements, anything like courses, DOV, etc., etc. And basically you can craft this CV and submit that off in your initial application to all these different companies. Another thing they can ask for is a cover letter. So some companies ask for a CV and a cover letter. And a cover letter is more of a, you can sort of think of it as, well, it's a letter, right? It's a letter explaining your motivations, okay? So CV is more just about your experience. It's sort of a concrete, just what is your experience, what are your skills, who are you, etc. A cover letter is more of like a personalized motivational thing. It's explaining why you want the job. Okay, so you're going to have to put in some paragraphs here in your cover letter explaining why you want to work for that company in particular, why you want to do a degree apprenticeship, why you're interested in the subject. Okay, you have to personalize this to each company, making sure you're doing research. So this is a sort of template cover letter I made, basically using the same structure as all the cover letters that I submitted to get my 8 degree apprenticeship offers. And it's basically, yep, you're going to be talking about some of your work experience, talking about some of your skills, but you're also going to be talking about why you want to work for the company and research you've done on the company. So that's something you'll have to bear in mind. You might have to submit a cover letter for some of your applications. Now, another thing they can do is application questions. So there are actually some companies who they ask for a CV and a cover letter and application questions. It can get quite onerous. Just remember that sometimes the degree apprenticeship application process, it can be quite long because you have to do all these things, but it is worth it because degree apprenticeships are a really good package. But another thing they can do is ask application questions. So it can be things like, why would you like to work for whatever company you're applying to? And then it'll say like max 750 characters or max 500 words, something like that. And then in the application, which is like online, there'll be like a text box, and you can just fill it in with text. So you can like type your answer on Word, copy and paste it in, all that sort of thing. Okay, so you need to be prepared for some of your applications. They're going to have a couple of these application questions. It can be kind of annoying. So I was having a look back when I was making this video at one of my applications, and I had to submit a CV and a cover letter, and I think it was about 5 application questions of 750 characters. So it took me a couple of hours to get all that done. But let me just show you some examples of the sort of questions they can be asking. You can see them on screen here. Can you tell us what you feel your strengths are? What interests you most? What was your favourite subject? Tell us about a time you feel like you did something really well. this is your opportunity to impress our assessors. So it can be on absolutely anything. It's going to be different for every single company. But it's just another thing that you might have to do on top of a CV and a cover letter, is sort of tailor these personalized, unique answers to some of these application questions. And now this is the final sort of thing they usually do in an initial application, which some companies do. So a lot of companies still sort of do the CV cover letter approach, but it's getting more and more common that companies are doing this thing called like work experience and education boxes. Like it sounds kind of weird, but basically instead of having to write like a CV or cover letter, it's where they sort of give you a Google Forms, like a Google Forms sort of thing, and you just have to fill in all like the boxes. So basically they'll give you a Google Forms to do with your work experience, and you just fill in all your work experience in that section. They'll also give you like a Google Forms bit, which is like education, and just fill in all your education. So you can see here, you basically get one of these boxes, and you just fill it in with your work experience, a brief description, and then you can just make a new one for all of the work experience that you've done. Okay. And then similarly with education, there'll just be a Google Forms part of it, with your education, where you can just make like a new box, add in A-level 1, A-level 2, A-level 3, then all your GCSEs and all that sort of thing. So this can be much easier if the company you're applying to decides to do this, write like a full-on cover letter or anything like that. But it also can be annoying because you have to like put in every single one of your GCSEs like every single time. But yeah, this is just wanted to put this in here because some companies, like more and more companies, are starting to use this process of sort of a Google Forms rather than the official CV and cover letter. As I said earlier, the application process differs for all companies. I'm just trying to cover every single base here, so that basically whenever you get to one of the companies you want to apply to, you're always going to be able to come back to this video and understand the application process, because I've just made sure I've covered every single type in here. Okay, so there we go. That is the initial application. You're going to usually do all those. It's going to be online, and then you're going to send that off when it's ready. And that's when you're going to move on to the intermediate stages if you are successful in your initial application. So the intermediate stages, these can usually be sent through anywhere from 48 hours to 3 months after submitting your initial application. Yeah, so they can either be very quick on it. So I've submitted applications, and within 48 hours I've been sent an email saying, yep, you've been successful, you're now going to get onto the next stage. I've also done applications where I've genuinely had to wait like 3 months, 3 or 4 months, and didn't hear anything. And then eventually, after 3 months, they said, oh, you've made it onto the next stage. So it really just depends on the company. If at any point you're getting worried because you haven't heard from them in a while, a lot of companies do that. It's quite annoying, but it is what it is. Just drop them an email, just ask them what's the progress, and they'll usually just reply, oh yeah, we're still reviewing applications, just to check that they've received your applications. If you like submit it and you literally don't even get an email confirmation for like a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, then just send them an email just to check that they've received your application. But once they tell you that you've been successful in the initial application and you've got onto the intermediate stages, there's usually 2 types of sort of intermediate stages they do. First one is online testing. The second is a video interview. So online testing is basically where they're going to send you an email to sort of a website where you might have to just complete some tests in your own time, like on your laptop. So you'll just click the link, and it'll go to like a software, and it'll set you up on one of these tests, maybe give you like a 10-minute timer, 1-hour timer, 30-minute timer, whatever it is, right? So there's a couple of different tests they do. I'll just talk them through. First sort of type they'll do is like a personality test. And this is where they might do like they just ask you a bunch of questions to try and figure out what type of person you are. Okay, so they're trying to figure out, are you a collaborative person? Are you an adventurous person? Are you someone who enjoys social situations? Are you someone who challenges themselves? Are you someone who like picks yourself up from setbacks? It's basically they might do loads of true and false. They might do, are you more independent or communicative, and independent and collaborative, and you have to choose them. And there's like 100 questions, and it makes like a whole psychological personality profile of you. And they're basically trying to work out, is that personality a good fit for you? So you might have seen those like 16 personalities things, where it can work out if you're like an INTP or an ENTJ, like if you're an extrovert, if you're an introvert, if you're more aggressive or passive, if you're more assertive, all that sort of thing, if you're more emotional, all that sort of thing. That's basically what this is. They're basically making you do a bunch of questions. Sometimes it can be weird. Like one I did was basically they show you 2 pictures, and you have to choose which picture it is, and like one picture on the right would be like a spaceman in a spacesuit in space, and the other one would be like a canoe on a lake, and you have to like choose which one. So they're kind of weird, right? 'Cause it's like, oh, do I choose the spaceman so I seem like I like technology, or do I choose the canoe because that seems adventurous but also down to earth? Like it's all kind of weird. You just sort of have to just do it, and basically it'll assess your personality, and if they think your personality is a good fit for the company. The next one, situational judgment test, and this is sort of to judge how well they think you would perform in the workplace. So it's basically where they might give you 20 questions of like a scenario and like a multiple choice, sort of 4 different things you could do. So it could be a situation like, what would you do if you were working on a project and you realized that you were going to overrun? What would you do, right? And there would be 4 options. Like option 1, I would just work as hard as I can and try and finish it if possible. Number 2, I would let the project manager know in advance so that he just had some early warning and could plan. Number 3, I would go and ask a colleague if they could help me out so I could speed up, right? And it's like, which of those 3 scenarios would you pick? And it's like, potentially the first one shows your independence, but you're sort of not willing to ask for help and you're like happy to risk a deadline. Number 2 is like you're really organized and you think communication is important. And number 3 is like you're willing to ask for help and be collaborative. And basically they'll get all your answers and be like, okay, this is the kind of person, this is the kind of decisions they're going to make. We want this person. So this person's consistently making bad decisions in our situational judgment test. They would probably make bad decisions in the workplace. I don't want them working for our company. That sort of thing. Okay, so you sort of have to look at that scenario and be like, what is the best option that I would do if I work for this company? And then if you're the person who if you chose good options, then you'll get through to the next stage, right? Another one they can do is numerical ability, mental maths. So a lot of companies actually use the same program, which is like a mental maths program where basically just you get given like a time limit, and basically loads of sums are going to just appear on the screen, and you have to answer them as quickly as possible, get through as many as you can in the time limits. That's just purely like a mental maths numerical ability thing. Like, can you randomly do 7 times 13 really quickly? Can you do like 26 times 17 quickly, or that sort of thing? Can you do 89 plus 34 quickly? All of that sort of thing, just to see what your numerical ability is like. They're more likely to do that sort of thing for something like engineering, right, where sort of that numerical ability is going to be more important than, for example, I don't know, marketing or something, right? But maybe something engineering, data analytics, they're much more likely to do that numerical ability one. Another type they can do is game-based assessments. So these are they're quite a new thing from the past few years, and it's basically where it sort of does a bunch of mini games on your computer, sort of like problems, puzzles, which you're going to have to solve, use your mouse, use your keyboard, and these ones can be really weird. Okay, and the most common one for this is Arctic Shores. There's a lot of companies that use Arctic Shores. For example, Amazon, they use Arctic Shores. So what I'd actually recommend is, if you do have an Arctic Shores, like if an Arctic Shores link gets sent to you, I'd actually recommend that you watch my video on Arctic Shores, where I basically break down exactly how to like beat the system for the game-based assessment, because these game-based assessments, it's tracking like your reaction time and your clicks and exactly what you do and all this sort of thing. They can be very difficult to succeed. And when I actually did Arctic Shores, I did it 3 times. The first 2 I failed completely and got rejected, and then by the third time I did it, I actually worked out how you can sort of game the system and make sure you pass. So if you get a game-based assessment like Arctic Shores, to be honest, I just recommend watching my video on it, because that'll basically give you some more detailed information about how to pass. And the final sort of type they can do is logic reasoning tests. So things like, they'll like show you a pattern, can you spot the pattern? They might show you like which one's the odd one out, that sort of thing. If this is the sequence, what's next in the sequence? Okay, if Sarah is on the 4th floor and Brian is below Jane, but Jane is above Gary, then who is on which floor? Like those sort of problems, and you have to work out, okay, this guy's on the 4th floor, this guy's on the 2nd floor, this guy's on the 3rd, etc., etc. Those sort of logic things they can do to basically test like your spatial awareness, your numerical, like your verbal reasoning, your non-verbal reasoning, all that sort of thing. Just sort of get a gauge of how clever you are, basically, and then if you can do those problems, then they'll get you through to the next stage. Okay, so that's just a brief overview of like the different types of online testing they can do. It's different for each company, but it's basically usually going to be one of those if you end up doing online testing. The other intermediate stage they could do is a video interview. Sometimes they can do both. There's some applications I did where I did initial application and online testing and a video interview, and then we moved on to the next stage. Some of them they just do a video interview, some of them they just do online testing. Okay, but a video interview, it's slightly different to a normal interview, which is why they're sort of called video interviews. So what it is you're going to be like sitting in front of your laptop like this one, and you're going to get fed questions by a slide deck. So again, you get sent a link, you sort of just log on to some software, and basically a question's just going to pop up on the screen, and you're going to have to just speak your answer to it, and your answers are sort of automatically recorded by the webcam, and then those recordings can be reviewed by the assessors at a later date. Okay, so obviously with a normal interview, you're going to be talking to a real person, or if it's on like Zoom or Teams, you're going to be like in a video call with a real person. This is like completely automated. There's going to be no person there. It's literally just like the computer talking to you. The computer just displays a question on the screen, and then it records your answer, and then it immediately just gets submitted, and then basically 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, whenever the assessors get round for it, they'll sort of just review your recordings. Okay? And now the good thing about a video interview is because it's not like a real interview, they actually give you some like sort of a helping hand. So the first one is you're given time to prepare. So in a normal interview, they ask you the question, you basically have to respond within like 5 or 10 seconds. Like it's like a real conversation. You can't just sit there for a minute thinking about it. With a video interview, they usually actually give you time to prepare, maybe like 60 seconds. So the question will like come up on the screen, and basically they'll do a countdown of like 1 minute, and this is 1 minute where you can prepare your answer, you can think about what you want to talk about, make some notes if needed. So that's a good positive of the video interview, is that you have that time to prepare for each question. And the other one is you can usually have a second or third go at answering each question. So a lot of these video interviews, you can like sort of give your first response, and then they ask you if you want to re-record your answer like a second time or a third time. For some of them, they only let you have 2 attempts. Some of them they let you have 3 attempts, etc. So that's a good one. So it just means if you like mess up on your first attempt because you weren't quite ready, you can just give it another go and do like a second recording of it. So that's the video interview, and those are some advantages of a video interview compared to a normal one. So there we go. Those are the intermediate stages. They do online testing and a video interview. And once they do that, it is basically usually the last stage of the application process, which they call the assessment centre, because there's going to be lots of different stages which we'll get into, but it's usually the assessment centre is the last thing now, the last thing standing between you and your dream degree apprenticeship. So an assessment centre, post-COVID, these are mostly virtual, so most of them you're just going to have to stay at home, and it'll be like a Teams meeting, a Zoom meeting, etc. There can be a few that are still done in person, but out of like the 8 assessment centres I did, only one of mine was in person. Okay, so they're mostly virtual now just because it saves on costs. They just do it on Teams or Zoom. These can either last a few hours, or they can actually last a whole day. So a lot of the time you're going to have to take the day off school and just stay at home, or obviously if it's in person, go in person to the assessment centre. Something to bear in mind here is the invite is usually done by phone. So I'm putting this in here because this was like a sort of mistake I made. Throughout the rest of the process, a lot of the contacts can be done via email. Like all of the contacts can be done via email. They're going to email you saying, oh, your initial application was successful, you're now through to online testing. They'll email you the link to online testing. Once you've done the online testing, they'll email you, say, oh, you're successful in online testing, you're now doing a video interview, etc., etc. With the assessment centre, a lot of companies, for me it was probably like 90% of companies, to get to this stage, once you've been successful in the online testing or the video interview or whatever was previous, they actually phoned me rather than emailing me. So it was around the time when I was like going through this application process, I was getting a whole bunch of like missed calls from some random numbers. Now I don't even pick up phone calls like even from people I know, so I definitely wasn't picking it up from some random number. And after I'd missed like loads of calls, I eventually like listened to one of my voicemails, and it turns out it was actually like one of the companies saying they were trying to get hold of me because they wanted to talk about my application, obviously to say I got through to the assessment centre. So that's just something to bear in mind. Make sure like as you're going through this application process, if all of a sudden one day you start getting loads of like missed calls from certain numbers, chances are it might be them calling about the assessment centre. Okay, and this can be received anywhere from like 2 weeks to like 4 months after the previous stage, whatever that was, online testing, video interview, because they sort of have to just wait until everyone's done online testing, and then they can get back a group of you together and go to the assessment centre. So, multiple stages they can do in the assessment centre: interview, presentation, group exercise, case study, networking event. Let me go through these and just have a drink first. Okay. Interview. So, let me take you back to before my first interview that I had for my degree apprenticeships. The key thing I did was I literally Googled 50 common interview questions, right? To see what questions would be in the interview. Okay, and I basically went through like everything that came up and like practiced all those answers. The problem with doing that is degree apprenticeships, in the scheme of things, degree apprenticeships are a new thing and like a small thing. So all the websites were just like interview questions for just normal roles that you might be going to when you're like a 35-year-old senior engineer, right? So it's actually useful to know what the questions specifically for a degree apprenticeship, because there's not much out there. So that's what I'm going to cover now, basically the interview. Again, like I said, you could be in person, in like a meeting room with 1 or 2 interviewers, or it's just going to be something on Teams, Zoom, something like that. These are basically the types of questions they do in degree apprenticeship interviews, okay? Because if you Google common interview questions, it'll do loads of random stuff which isn't even relevant to you. This is what they ask in degree apprenticeship interviews. There's 3 main types. And the first one is standard questions. So these are the ones you can Google, right? And they'll likely come up. Just normal things like, why do you want this role, okay? Why do you think you'd be a good fit? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why do you want to work for our company specifically? What's the biggest challenge you expect to face? Why do you want to do a degree apprenticeship over going to university? Okay, that sort of thing. Those standard questions, those answers you can prepare in advance. The next sort of type of questions is called STAR questions. Okay, and these are questions that start, tell me about a time when. Okay, so I'll give you some examples of these STAR questions. Tell me about a time when you worked as a team. Tell me about a time when you worked really hard on something. Tell me about a time when you learned from a mistake. Tell me about a time when you led a project. There's a whole bunch of variations. I put like quite a lot of those variations on screen for you now, just so you can like maybe screenshot it, something like that, so you got a copy of that. These are basically questions where you need to respond with a scenario that's happened to you in your life. Okay, a time when you worked as a team, or a time when you came up with a creative solution. The reason it's called a STAR question is because you need to structure your answer in a certain way. Situation, task, action, result. Okay, so tell me about a time when you worked as a team. Well, you're going to talk about the situation you worked as a team. So maybe that was a year ago, you were in like the cup final with your football team. Okay, and that was a situation. The task was you needed to win the game, right? And then these are the actions you took. As captain, you made sure you listened to everyone's viewpoints on the tactics you want to do. Half time, when we were like 3-0 down, I made sure to ask everyone's opinion to work out what we wanted to do. During the game, we had to collaborate and help each other and support each other. There were people who were injured, so we had to change up positions and help each other. Those are the actions you took, okay, to work as that team. The result was, because of those changes we did at half time and the constant collaboration, we ended up like equalising and we won 4-3. Okay, so that's where STAR comes from. Situation, task, action, result. You want to basically be having examples ready for all of those different types of questions. Tell me about a time when you worked above and beyond for a customer. It was this situation, it was this task, this was the action I took, and there was this result. Okay, so that's the second type of question they do in degree apprenticeship interviews. And the final one is scenario-based questions, which they can ask you like, what would you do if you had to work with a difficult colleague? What would you do if you had to manage multiple priorities at once? What would you do if you're working on some work and you realise that you weren't going to meet the deadline? Okay? That sort of thing. Those are the scenario-based questions they can ask you. And these are actually getting more common, by the way. So last year when I was helping loads of people with their degree apprenticeship applications and interviews, these scenario-based questions are actually becoming very common. So this is definitely something for September 2025 I'd bear in mind, because scenario-based questions, they're being asked a lot now. So after the interview, another stage you can do in the assessment centre is a presentation. This is where beforehand, before the assessment centre, the day you go, they're going to send you like a brief to a presentation, and it's basically a task you have to prepare in advance. So it might be, for example, prepare a 7-minute presentation on a technical topic of your choice. And that means before your assessment centre, you need to spend time basically making that presentation, okay, following that brief, completing that task. Okay, so this is an example. Basically, I did a bunch of recordings of the presentations that I did to get my offers, just to help people on their presentations. This was one of them that I did. You basically have to prepare this in advance, so that basically when you go into your assessment centre, there's going to be like a specific presentation session where you have to deliver your presentation, and then usually the assessor is going to ask you questions afterwards. Another thing they can do is the group exercise. This is where basically they're going to put you with anywhere from 2 to 10 of the other candidates. So in this assessment centre, there's going to be a whole bunch of you. There might be like 10 of you in one assessment centre, and there might be 16 of you in one assessment centre. And basically, they might split you into groups and give each group a task. Okay, and what they're looking for is like, how well can you collaborate and work with a team? Because that's one of the key things, is you're going to have to collaborate. Whether you're doing a technology degree apprenticeship and you're going to be doing some software engineering, you're going to have to collaborate with other software engineers. If you're, I don't know, doing civil engineering and you're designing the roads, you're going to have to collaborate with the drainage and the lamp posting team and the earthworks team. Right, if you're designing certain parts of a car, you're going to have to collaborate with other people in your team and clients and etc., etc. So they're looking for that. But on top of that, they're also looking for your individual leadership skills and also intelligence in terms of if you can come up with good ideas in your group exercise. So these are just some example sort of tasks they could get you to do, like plan a charity sporting event. Okay, imagine you're stranded in space. What would you do? Da, 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 da. Okay, so that's a group exercise. This one's actually a really like fun. I really enjoyed doing this group exercise. But yeah, that's a group exercise. And then the case study is actually very similar. So some companies do like a case study as well as a group exercise, and it's effectively a group exercise, but you do it individually. So it's just going to complete an individual task and talk it through to the assessors. The most important thing here is assessors are looking for how well you can communicate and summarize your ideas. Because of that key part there, you're going to talk it back to the assessors. So can you like coherently have that conversation with the assessor, explaining the task you've done, why you've chosen the decisions you've done, etc. But also they can look for your creativity, attention to detail, any background knowledge. You come up with some good ideas. There's something you notice in the task, attention to detail that no one else did. So some sort of examples of case studies they can give you is like create a plan for distributing clean energy, provide recommendations for a bridge design, all that sort of thing. And you sort of have to create that plan and report it back to the assessor. So the difference between like the presentation and the case study is the presentation is all going to be prepared in advance. It's all going to be ready. You're going to have the slides ready, and then basically you go into your assessment center and there'll be a presentation session. You just share your screen or whatever, and then just talk through your presentation. With the case study, you're going to have to like all make it on the spot. Okay, so it's going to be a case study session during your assessment center, which you're going to have to do. They might give you 30 minutes, like in a call with an assessor. They'll give you 30 minutes where the assessor will sort of just watch you in the background. You'll have 30 minutes to complete the task and like prepare your thoughts on it, and then you after that maybe 15 minutes to have that conversation with the assessor and present your thoughts. Okay, so that's different. The presentation is prepared in advance. The case study you sort of have to do impromptu on the spot. And the final thing they can do in the assessment center is something like a networking event. Again, this is where they might get all of the assessors and the other candidates in person, and sort of you just go around, talk to people, have conversations, and at the same time the assessors are sort of like assessing you as a person as they get to know you. Be like, is this kind of person I'd want to work for my company? And it's all about honestly just like leaving a good impression, because this is probably the first time you're going to meet them in person. So that's another thing they can do. I know some of the this isn't common. Not many companies do this networking event, but I think it's more of a thing in the finance industry, especially for finance degree apprenticeships, where they might do a networking event like this. So there we go. That is the assessment center. Those are the different stages they can have in the assessment center. As I said at the start, it's different for each company. So some company might just do an interview. Some might do an interview and a presentation. Some might do an interview and a presentation and a group exercise. Some might do a networking event and a group exercise. Like, you know what I mean? It can be any variation of, but usually it's like those 5 things are what you're going to get in a degree apprenticeship assessment center. And there we go. That's the application process covered. I've explained the different stages of the degree apprenticeship application process. There we go, all explained. And once you've been through that entire application process for your degree apprenticeships, the dream outcome there is that you end up getting the offer. And what they'll do is after your assessment center, it can be anywhere from 2 days afterwards to maybe a week, 2 weeks after. They'll send you a phone call or send you an email, hopefully saying that you've been successful and they're going to be offering you the job. Last year, I helped a whole bunch of people get offers from their degree apprenticeships. Companies like KPMG, JLR, IBM, Amazon, just to name a few. So if you are interested in getting my help with getting your dream degree apprenticeship, then you can go and click the link in the description. You can see we've had some insane results. So yeah, go and click that link in the description if you're serious about getting your dream degree apprenticeship. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day. Peace out.